Deep breath, I'm ready to go. Now the next phase, the next stage, is something that took me by surprise. When I started out this journey of discovery, I had no idea what I was going to find. So, it all began with Indigo Jones, who was the artist for James I, in 1611 or thereabouts, 400 years ago. So Stonehenge has been a mystery for 400 years. But it's been there for 4,000 years. And a chap asked me, this is the difficulty, how do you know about these stones? Do they channel to you? Do they talk to you? I said, no. I said, you look at the orientation, the distance apart, the height, the size. It's in formation, like within the army, in formation. So when you read a book, which is paper and ink, does it channel to you? It tells you things what happened 100 years ago. It's by the orientation, the distance apart of the ink spots. Now Stonehenge was built 4,000 years ago, and it was a monument in the truest sense of the word. They knew as long as the stones would remain, the information would be carried. Buildings of high status were made in such a way that they could be rediscovered. Buildings of low status, higgledy-piggledy, it didn't matter. But Stonehenge was the most important building in the world. And what I've discovered on my journey is the symmetry and the mathematics. I built this model in my front room, and I had two men working with me. You see, I'm not very good with my hands. But Paul and Reg were qualified joiners. They made the model. And all the way through we're building this model, they didn't believe in what I was doing. It's too good, it's too this, it's too that. But as we were working, we happened to mention, I haven't got my stick, but every third beam goes to the apex. The distance to the stone. This stone is 1/3 of the diameter of Stonehenge. The Z holes, 1/3 of that distance. So we're thinking threes. And then Paul came to me and he said, I've just seen something. The Sarsen circle is exactly 1/3 of the height of the building. Isn't that amazing? I didn't figure that out. And I thought, what else have you found? So we started to look. This row of lintels, half the height of the building, 2/3 the height of the building. When you stand in the middle of Stonehenge, the distance to the stones is exactly the height of the building. This is interesting. When you measure from point to point, on my model you can do it, you can measure the distance, the 10-pointed star. When you stand that up, it's the height of the building. When you go to the V, what goes in, it's the distance of the Sarsen circle. The angle of the roof, I put it where I thought was right. I asked the builder, is that right? He said, yeah, it's about right, mate. When I measured it, the base is 3, the height is 1. Number 3 again. 3 rings of stones. 3. So then I started to look for more, and it just all started to happen. I realised it was almost like that gold plaque they sent on Voyager. It was an information. Anyone would look at it and say, no, it's a load of alignments, mate, but it doesn't make any sense. But to a trained eye, it's everything. They knew that someone would come along and figure it out. And do you know the Sarsen circle? 100 feet diameter, the thickness of the stone, measure the inside radius, 300 feet exactly. So they went to great pains to make it so that the ratio fits exactly the same. So, just going to branch off a little minute. I met some people, and one of them said, "Did you know that henge means hang?" And I said, "Well, yes. They used to call it. Hang means hanging in the air or hanging by the neck. But then somebody started to call the Trilithian horseshoe a hang or a henge. Then in the 70s it became, the soil circle became a henge. Then it became a circle. Now everything's called a henge. But henge means hang. Hanger. Hanger. German name. And he said, if you measure the distance from this wall to this wall for the roof, it's called the hang of the roof. This is called the hang of the roof. What locks down. So Stonehenge is descriptive of a great big building. Even today they call aircraft hangar. Yeah. And then I met another farmer, Alan, and he said, "Do you know how to get them stones out of the ground, boy?" And I said, "No." He said, "You dig a hole at one side, on the longest side, dig a hole and build a fire, and the fire cracks the stone, and if it doesn't, throw a bucket of water on it." Now I've tried to do this, and the stone goes like clay, and you can lever it out and take it away. Now Alan didn't know, but every one of these holes has had a fire in it at one side, and you read in the book it's called a hearth fire. So in their opinion, they sit in the hole and the fire's on the other side, and you can have this fire, hearth fires. What I'm saying is archaeological evidence to prove that there were stones in these holes. So going back to the building, the roof covering made of tiles, the water would have run all the way down to the points. Now I believe that it didn't just run off, it went through a hole. So the edge of the building, the water went in this hole, he didn't even know where it went to. It went into a cistern inside where no one could see it. And we go into churches today. Now this is what I call an interpretation. I've got a lot of information to back it up, believe me. But when you go into churches today, there's a little tiny font you can dip your fingers in and do the cross. I believe that's something which has come down like a remnant through time. In Stonehenge, they had a place where you could take refreshment. You know, you were in this building, there were proceedings going on. There was no water anywhere else, no source of water for miles. But people back then carried a cup. We know they did. They didn't have a flat bottom cup like today you can put down. It was a radius bottom. You can go to the British Museum and see the Ringlemere cup. It has a radius bottom. And the people would have taken their cup and took refreshment and carried on with the day. So there was, this water was very valuable, it was accessible for people. And so I've lost my track of the slideshow. Here we are. Now, this building, you didn't see the stones. You approached it, let's say I'm a foreign dignitary. You approach Stonehenge, and there it is on the horizon, and you see this, what almost looks like a stealth bomber in the distance. Great big powerful building. And as you approach it, up the processional avenue, at that time the sun would have been above the building. You're already starting to feel a sense of anticipation. And as the processional avenue dips, the stones would disappear. But you didn't see the stones. The apex would go and almost disappear. You could still see the apex. And as you're walking forward, it's not getting any closer. It stays the same. And then, as you come up on the last minute, the whole thing appears. You walk through the Trilithian archway. You stand before Stonehenge. The sun is on the apex. You walk into what you think is a dark descending place. It looks like a barn. When you get inside, they close the outer doors. They open the inner doors and you walk into the biggest shock, the most amazing sight you've ever seen. It would have been astounding, absolutely astounding. Here we are. This great big stone stood up in the middle of the room, the Sarsen Circle, and it appears as if every Trilithian is holding up 3 roof beams. It looks like these great big pillars of strength are holding up the roof. But it's only when you walk forward you realise there's nothing holding up the roof. It was like God holding up the roof. Stonehenge, literally the roof is hanging there and nothing holding it up. So I'll just go to the next picture. Can you see the Trilithians? Now they're in a horseshoe shape. Why is it a horseshoe? Why are they stood in the middle of the room? It was only when I went inside with a small camera I saw it. It was as if I'd walked inside. The Trilithians are all different sizes. The one farthest away is the biggest, 26 foot high. The next one, a couple of feet down. The next set, smaller still, in a horseshoe. But from the point where I'm standing at the entrance on the summer solstice line, all 5 are equal. The one farthest away is exactly the same size as this one. And it's a perfect circle. It's been made as an illusion, an optical illusion. And when you walk forward, it would have been amazing. And you stand in the middle of Stonehenge. And one of the great things about Stonehenge is the acoustics. I got a BBC engineer to look at this, and he said that acoustics are astounding because it's a cone. It's amplified back. So I went to buildings, similar buildings in Paris, and went inside, and amazing acoustics. So Stonehenge had a wooden floor. Now, it took me 2 years to figure it out because I was putting planks on top of wood like they do at home. But it wasn't. The floor was made of great big thick timbers, all going together. Like, that's a very crude drawing. For the reason it took 2 years, you look at the circle, you look at the building, you look at everything. What was in the middle? What was, statue? What? An idol? And it was not anything but what I call a rotor. It was Stonehenge. The plan of Stonehenge was in the centre of the floor, and that enabled every 3 beams for every point. Can you see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3? It all goes with the symmetry of the building. So the whole floor radiated out from this central point. So it was the place itself which they held in reverence.